Imagine driving down a pitch-black forest road at 2 in the morning, only to see a strange figure standing dead center in your headlights. Welcome back to horror. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here. If you enjoy this story, smash that like button to help us out. I work as an over-the-road truck driver for a grocery chain that is local to my state. I drive specifically overnight because I haul refrigerated loads to several different stores, so they need to be delivered on time and not get held up in traffic. Each store is usually 2 to 3 hours apart. The catch is that I get paid by the hour, not by the mile. So if I finish my deliveries early, I actually make less money for doing a better job. It makes no sense, and the other drivers joke about it, but that is just how it is. It just meant we did not have to rush. This was a normal night with 3 deliveries to 3 different locations. The first 2 went perfectly fine, but I was having one of those off nights where I was exhausted and the time felt like it was dragging. I was an hour ahead of schedule, so I debated whether to push through the last delivery and go home early or stop and take a break. Basically, I could get paid for a 1-hour nap, then deliver the last one on time. As I was trying to decide, I was driving to the next location through a very thick forest. But here is where things took a very weird turn. The road was completely empty, just like every night I drove on it. But suddenly, I saw a guy right in the middle of the road up ahead. I noticed him soon enough that I did not need to slam on my brakes, but I was going fast, so the stop was not smooth. The man looked very strange. He did not look hurt, he did not look like a hitchhiker, and there was no reason for him to be out here in the middle of a lonely road. Even after I stopped, the guy did not move. He just stood there. After a second, I realized I was crazy for stopping and got a bad feeling. Before we go on, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you do not miss our next story. I put the truck in drive and passed him in the other lane. I checked my mirrors as I got further away, and the guy still had not moved. A minute down the road, I passed a car parked on the shoulder. I figured it belonged to that weird guy in the road. But what made no sense was that all of the doors were wide open. All 4 doors were fully open. It felt like a trap, though I had no other proof. Maybe he opened them to get attention. It confused me, but I knew I would never figure it out, so I stopped thinking about it after a few minutes. After that strange encounter, I decided to take a break at the next gas station or rest stop along the route. It was safer than driving tired, and since I was getting paid for it, it was a no-brainer. But now, this is where things get even more unsettling. About 10 miles down the road, I pulled into a gas station. I had been along this route many times, but never stopped at this one because it was older, the building was closed at night, and it just seemed dead. It never had other truckers stopping there. Tonight was no different. The gas station was empty, and the large semi-truck parking area behind it was empty too. I pulled into a spot, took one last look around this abandoned-feeling gas station, set my alarm for 40 minutes, and laid back in my seat. My eyes snapped open to the sound of my alarm, but nothing could prepare me for the absolute terror waiting right outside my windshield. It felt like I had been asleep for hours, but my phone confirmed it had only been 40 minutes. I reached over to turn off the buzzing noise, but as soon as my eyes fully opened, I got instant chills down my spine. If you are enjoying this creepy story so far, smash that like button right now and tell me your thoughts. Right there, parked directly in front of my massive truck, was a car with its headlights beaming and all of its doors swung wide open. It was the exact same vehicle I had seen abandoned on the side of the road earlier. I frantically looked all around the dark parking lot and checked my side mirrors, but the entire area was dead silent. There was absolutely nothing moving out there. I just sat there frozen, terrified because my gut told me something was horribly wrong. Yet the complete lack of movement made it even more unsettling. Where did the people from this car go? And why on earth were all the doors left open? After a minute of sitting in fear, I put the truck in drive, backed out of the space, and quickly fled the gas station. I spent the last hour of my drive trying to figure it out, but I had absolutely no theories. This happened just 2 months ago, and I still have no answers. Maybe someone watching this has an idea of what was going on. Fortunately, I haven't seen that strange man or the car on any of my routes since. But here is where things get really interesting. I work for a professional moving company that handles large cross-country moves. I don't actually do any of the physical lifting. I am just the truck driver. This specific move was from Boston all the way to a small city in California, which is about as long of a drive as you can possibly get. The great part about these long trips was that I could plan out my driving schedule however I wanted, as long as I arrived at the destination on time. For this move, the East Coast portion of the trip went completely fine, but the western half of the country is where the drive gets incredibly lonely and empty. You face long stretches of highway with massive gaps between gas stations and rest stops. Make sure to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell right now so you don't miss the next part of this story. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I needed a restroom break and pulled into a tiny rest stop along the highway. There was absolutely no one else there, in either the car or truck parking areas. I parked the rig, spent a moment organizing some things in my cab, and then stepped out. It was dead quiet outside, with not a single vehicle even passing by on the highway. I was used to the isolation, so I walked inside to use the bathroom. But while I was in there, I heard a loud, heavy metallic thud come from the parking lot. Now this is the crazy part. I walked outside a minute later, but the parking lot was completely empty. Only my truck was sitting there under the lights, and it was just as silent as when I first arrived. I did a quick walk around to check the truck and make sure everything was secure, but seeing nothing out of the ordinary, I got back in and kept driving. I had no idea what that sound was, but I assumed it was nothing. I drove for a few more hours until my fuel was running low, so I stopped at a gas station to fill up. While the pump was running, extreme exhaustion finally hit me, and I seriously thought about just sleeping there for the night. It was already midnight, and I had driven more than enough for one day. But for some strange reason, I decided not to stay there. I chose to drive another 30 minutes down the highway to the very next rest stop instead. Which part of this story would have creeped you out the most? Let me know in the comments below. During that next 30-minute drive, my eyes got incredibly heavy, and I was just desperate to pull over and pass out. But wait until you hear what was waiting for me at the very next stop. The road was completely dead, and it felt like I was the only person left driving in the middle of the night. Finally, I saw the rest area and pulled in. This place was divided, keeping the cars and the big semi-trucks in separate parking lots. I could see a few cars parked through the trees on the other side, but the truck side was completely empty. I didn't mind being alone, though. I just parked the truck, turned on the AC, and crawled into the small sleeper area in the back of the cab to lay down. About 2 hours later, I woke up suddenly to a loud thump. It was so heavy that I could actually feel the vibration shake through the entire body of the truck. I scrambled into the front seat to see if someone was trying to break into the cab, but I couldn't see anyone outside. I sat there for a second, wondering if some of the cargo in the back had just fallen over. But here is the crazy part. The very moment I thought that, I heard another loud thump right behind me. This time, I was positive it came from inside the trailer. I got out of the cab and walked around to the back doors. The metal security clip was still sealed, and the locks were completely secure. Part of me thought I was just losing my mind, but my gut told me I couldn't ignore this. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Before I tell you what I found, take a second to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this story. I snapped the security clip off, unlocked the padlocks, and pulled the heavy doors open. Right away, I heard something shifting around inside, like boxes moving. A huge rush of adrenaline hit me, and I knew this was much worse than I thought. I climbed up and stepped into the dark trailer. It was packed tight with furniture and boxes, making it hard to see anything. I walked past a few items to get a better look down the middle. It was pitch black, but then I saw a head looking right at me over the top of some furniture. The person was completely still, trying to watch me without being seen. I nearly fell backward in pure terror. I jumped out, slammed the doors shut, and locked him inside. I stood there for a minute, trying to catch my breath and make sense of what just happened. I pulled out my phone and called the police right away. It was incredibly creepy waiting out there on that dark, isolated highway, but you won't believe what happened next. The guy inside didn't even try to escape during the 35 minutes it took for the cops to arrive. Maybe he didn't realize I had spotted him. When the officers finally showed up, they opened the doors and dragged him out. It turned out he wasn't just hitchhiking. He had a stash of food and water, and he was carrying a gun. He wasn't just trying to get a free ride, he was preparing to ambush the movers, or, more likely, the family at their new home. Nobody knows when he got inside the trailer or why he did it, and the family had never seen him before. Thankfully, the police took him away before he could do any harm. It seriously makes my blood run cold just thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't spotted him, or if I had tried to confront him myself. By the way, if you're enjoying this story, smash that like button right now. I was on a multi-day delivery route through the Midwest. I'd driven this exact road hundreds of times before, and the first part of the night was completely normal. I was on a very long, empty road. It wasn't a main highway because my deliveries go to smaller towns, so I couldn't take the main interstates the whole way. Most of the drive was just empty plains with long fields of nothing for as far as you could see. It was on this road, literally in the middle of nowhere, that I suddenly felt something wrong with the truck. The road noise got super loud, and the whole thing began to shake. I immediately pulled over to the side and shut off the engine. It happened so fast, I didn't even have time to think about what it could be. I sat there for a second, hoping it wasn't too bad, and then I got out. But here's the crazy part. It was dead quiet outside. The tall grass on both sides of the road was blowing in the wind, but other than that, there was nothing. No lights were visible in the distance either. I quickly saw that one of my tires was flat. It was actively losing air, slowly going down. I was so focused on that one tire that it took me a couple of minutes to realize it wasn't the only one. Out of 18 wheels, 6 were flat. I'd never even heard of this happening before. It felt like I'd run over a spike strip because of how fast it happened and how many tires were ruined. Before we go on, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss the next creepy story. Obviously, I couldn't fix this on my own, so I got my phone out and called for roadside assistance. This kind of stuff is really frustrating as a trucker because it's a huge waste of time that you don't get paid for. Since I was so far out, they told me assistance was about 2 hours away, and that was just an estimate. There was a good chance it would take twice as long. I took the chance to yell my frustrations into the empty night, which I'm glad no one was around to hear, then got back in the cab to wait. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. 30 minutes passed and the road stayed completely quiet. Not a single car came by. I was scrolling on my phone, checking emails, when I saw a light in my side mirror. I just caught it in the corner of my eye and didn't look up, assuming the car would pass in a few seconds. A minute later, I looked up, realizing the car never passed. I looked in the mirror, but it was empty. The light was gone. I opened my door and looked back. There was nowhere to turn around on this single-lane road and no reason to. How did a car just show up and then disappear before passing me? I wasn't terrified, but it felt pretty freaky being stranded on a desolate road. I rubbed my eyes, grabbed an energy drink from behind the seat, and got out for some fresh air. I walked to the side of the truck next to the grassy field, leaning against it to wait. I was only out there for 10 minutes, trying to stay awake, when I heard the grass move. It wasn't the sound of the wind blowing it around like it had been doing all night. No, this was the distinct sound of something moving in the grass. Instantly, it triggered something in my head. I stood up straight, my eyes scanning the dark field, but I couldn't see anything. But then, about 15 seconds later, a voice shattered the silence from the other side of my rig. It scared the absolute life out of me. Standing right there on the road, near the back of my trailer, was a man. He was peeking around the edge of the truck, asking if I was doing all right. Now this is where it gets really weird. There was no car parked behind my trailer. So how did this guy get out here? He started walking slowly toward me. The man looked to be in his mid-40s, had a gray beard, and looked incredibly tired. Something about him was just unsettling and creepy. He asked what was wrong with the truck and if I was okay. I lied, telling him I was fine and that help was coming any second, hoping he would leave. Even if he had good intentions, there was nothing he could do anyway. But he wouldn't leave. He kept asking questions. That's when I noticed his eyes. They were darting back and forth, looking at me, then at the field next to us. I felt threatened and knew I had to get back inside my cab. I keep a gun between the seats, so getting inside was much safer if I needed to protect myself. But here is the terrifying part. As I started walking toward the driver's side, the man followed right behind me. It felt like he was trying to block me from getting in. But once I got around to the driver's side and climbed into the cab, I didn't see him. He had stopped talking and wasn't at my door. The night went dead silent again. I checked my side mirrors, but he wasn't along the side of the truck. And still, there were no other cars around. The only place he could have gone was right back into that tall grass. The more I thought about it, the more freaked out I got. I pulled my gun out of its holster and held it in my hand for the next 2 hours, staring into the dark. Finally, the help arrived. We got everything fixed up and I was finally able to get out of there. On my way out, I talked to the maintenance guy about the creepy encounter. He told me that just a few months ago he got a call from a young guy whose tires had all popped on this exact same road. It took the worker about an hour and a half to get there, and when he did, he found the car sitting on the shoulder with 4 flat tires, but the driver was completely gone. He drove up and down the road looking for him, but eventually had to leave it to the police. Knowing that makes my own encounter feel so much more dangerous. Who was that man? And was he waiting in the grass for me to let my guard down? If this story gave you chills, share it with a friend, and let me know in the comments what you would have done. I still get shivers thinking about how close I came to never making it home.